Good evening. We live in a world of what's called technical accounting. Technical accounting means that clever accountants can manipulate money to make it say anything you want. Now, I come from a background of bookkeeping where all the money you get goes into one pot, and from that same pot you pay everything you owe. It's a very simple system, and it's very honest and very transparent, and everybody can understand it. We now live in an age where we need an accountant to explain to us what another accountant is doing. So let's have this look at this problem, because it's a very serious one in the city of Kawartha Lakes, and it's called capital accounting. So here we have the opening slide. Capital budgets are wrong for government bureaucracies, and we'll explain why. Now, this is the BC budget, and the Minister of Finance forecasts that surplus to be $534 million. And people then ask the question, if that's a surplus, then why is the provincial debt rising by $2.1 billion? Rising. That means every year. So every year, in fact, they have a surplus and they have a rise in debt. And in fact, there is a net loss to the taxpayers of $1.5 billion. And over the years, that has actually crept up to $77 billion for the people of British Columbia. But this is what happens. They tell us we've got a surplus, but we've got a huge debt. For some reason, the surplus and the debt are in different pots, and we never look at the debt pot. Now, businesses, real businesses, do two things. They sell services. Here we see a little chap selling his services with his lawnmower, and you may issue permits. Now that stuff is called the operating budget. Now when you start to build a bridge or something big like that, then that is called a capital budget. And these are the two budgets which the City of Kawartha Lakes and other governments play around with. Now this is the real world model of what happens. The business on the left hand side, it wants to start building a road, a toll road. So it goes to the bank and says, we want $8. And the bank says, it's a good idea, we give you $8. Then they take that money and they move across to the left and they pay a contractor to build the road and to maintain it. Those are the things in yellow. So we've now got our road built and we need to maintain it. Now we get money back by charging a toll, like on the 407. And that money flows back into the business, and from that we pay back our money to the bank, and we end up with a profit. So everybody is happy. That's how real businesses work. Now, in the municipal model, you see across through the toll. There is no toll money coming in. So there is no money flowing back into the business. So there is no paying back the debt to the bank. And so we don't have any profit. All we've done is to accumulate debt. So now I've stripped away the bits of the business model and left with the municipal model, and there, look at it. Now we've got another added problem, because not only did we borrow money from the bank which we're not repaying, but now we've got to maintain that road over the years, and we haven't allowed for that either. So we now have a future debt, the stuff in red, which is becoming bigger and bigger with every project the city does. So let's have a look at the real money trail in the Kawartha Lakes. The city doesn't have a product to sell, not even a toothpick. Its main function is to manage the taxes it sets and collects. Yeah, it sets how much we have to pay, and we can't do anything about it. The public has no control over this process at all. Now, this is what really happens in the city of Kawartha Lakes. There's property taxes, and there's fines, and there's bank loans, and there's debentures, and there's penalties, and levies, and fees, and front-end charges, and grants, and permits, and inspections, and rents. And it's all the money that is poured into that big bowl, and they mix it up. They never keep things together. For example, they sell property, but it just goes into the general funds and is lost forever. Now, out of that mixing bowls, what comes? The largest portion is salaries and the benefits and the consultants' fees, contractors' charges. Interest on debt is quite large, and the capital projects, the gifts to various organisations such as the Conservation Authority, and the supplies and future benefits of staff and advertising and office renovations. That is what happens to the money in the city of Kawartha Lakes. Now, Dr. Jack Mintz is a world authority on taxation, and his credential, he's a very, very well qualified man, and he's written some really searching papers. His research is on the province's stuff, but municipal governments are very similar. So let's see what Jack Mintz has to say. He says, governments are not businesses. Capital budgeting can distort public decision making. Politicians take hold of accounting practices. They determine how it's done, how technically it's manipulated to hide their debt. Governments are using accounting measures to hide the walloping faced by taxpayers when debt must eventually be paid. And he says, capital finances is letting governments confuse the voter. That is certainly the case. We are thoroughly confused. The use of capital budgeting leads to bad public management practices. Because if you don't budget properly, you make bad decisions. You think you've got more money than you really have, and then you spend it, and then you've got a bigger debt. So budgets show surpluses or small deficits, although the net debt keeps piling up. And that's the city we live in. Now, he also says to equate public intangible capital to financial assets is simply wrong. But if you actually read the budgets, that is exactly what happens. Somebody has added up all the bridges and roads and parks and things in the city of Kawartha Lakes and has come up with this magic figure of 3.2 billion. That's what they think they're worth. But the truth of the matter is they're not worth anything, because we can't even buy a cup of coffee with them. They have to be sold first before they're converted into cash, and then you can buy your coffee. So here is the road from Bobcaygeon to Lindsay, and it's for sale. Who would like to buy it? Of course, no one. And if no one wants to buy it, it has no value. So the city uses replacement value of the infrastructure, such as the arenas, the community halls, parks and roads, as real money. And it's not. Now look at this entry in the budget, and this is really staggering. Now this is, you may not be able to read it very well, so I'll point this one out for you. Here are some assets: hoists, ice plants, pools, and assets with unknown data. That worries me. But this stuff with the unknown data has a useful life of 46 years. And we say, well, what's it worth? Well, the valuation method is user defined. So they made up their own way of valuing it. And it's about $5.5 million. We have assets with unknown data, but we know how long they will last. We are not told how much they are valued, but we know how much they are worth. And that is in a city budget, and it's an absolute disgrace. Now, this is what the Ministry of Housing says. Municipalities can only incur long-term debt for capital projects. They must balance their budgets and can't borrow money to fund current operating expenses. That is the law. So how does the city get around it? Well, over there, you see, these government restrictions, which I just read out, on operational budget debt, they create an incentive to label operational spending as capital. In other words, they create an incentive for bureaucrats to cheat. That's what they're really saying here. For example, you could have teacher salaries and they would be classified as human capital. The little diagram tells it that the fixed cost on the left-hand side, the operational budget in grey, we've got a little piece of white on top, so we got a little piece of movement there, and the capital budget is the pink. Now what comes along, we hire a whole lot of teachers, perhaps they're teachers who are helping the firemen learn how to do their job or something like that. Now that's exceeded the fixed cost. So what do you do with it? You take it and you move it into capital, and you see that the red blob has now moved over onto capital. So now the capital budget has increased and the fixed budget is not in debt anymore, So everybody's happy except that the capital budget is the debt that we will pay. And what happens when they keep moving real debt from the operating budget into the capital budget is we end up with a humongous debt. In 2001 we had almost no debt, and now we have about 100 million. Nobody actually knows because it's not in the budget. So Professor Mintz writes, it's time to write off the procedure, capital budget, as a lost cause. Not only is it a lost cause, but it's patently dishonest and deceives the public into thinking that all is well, and sometime down the road those huge debts created by this capital budgeting process we will have to pay. Well, I hope you found that informative. Obviously we need a big push here to force the accounting system in a city to go to simple bookkeeping, something that we can all understand, but all that money goes into one pot and all the expenses come out of that one pot. As you know, if you followed what I was talking about in the last election, we are facing an uphill battle against the city to bring in some of these reasonable ideas. And for that, we really need your support. We need you to take these videos and share them with your friends, and particularly to like them so that we get a big support base. And also, I hate to mention it, but we could really do with some financial support. Thank you very much.